Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happened when Jack Nicholson took a seat across from Joy Behar on The View was something no one in the studio or watching at home saw coming. The topic seemed simple enough. Is modern America still the land of opportunity? But the moment Jack leaned forward, gave that slow, knowing grin and said, "It depends who you ask, sweetheart," everyone in the room knew it wouldn't stay simple for long. Joy, never one to back down, fired right back. "Oh, come on, Jack, you've lived the dream. Of course you'd say that." That was all it took. The crowd stirred, Whoopi's eyes widened, and the next 20 minutes turned into a tug-of-war between two generations and two very different Americas. Jack spoke like a man who'd seen the country rise and fall, still believing in its grit. Joy countered with cold statistics and headlines about inequality, insisting the dream had faded into myth. By the time the segment hit its midpoint, tension crackled like live wire. Jack's charm turned sharp, Joy's humor turned biting, and the conversation that began with nostalgia ended with an uncomfortable question that left the audience silent. "Maybe America's still the land of opportunity," Jack said quietly. "But the question is, who's allowed through the door anymore?" That line broke the internet before the credits even rolled. The lights at The View glowed warm and bright as the familiar theme music faded. The audience roared when Whoopi Goldberg introduced the day's guest, Hollywood legend Jack Nicholson. Wearing his trademark sunglasses and that half grin that had both charmed and intimidated audiences for decades, Jack gave a small wave before settling into the seat beside Joy Behar. "Jack Nicholson, everyone," Whoopi said. "He's here to talk about his thoughts on America, what's changed, what hasn't, and maybe stir the pot a little." "Maybe," Joy teased, crossing her arms with a grin. "With him here, we're going to need a fire extinguisher." Jack chuckled. "I'll try to behave," he said, though everyone could tell from his tone that he didn't mean it. The topic flashed on screen. Is modern America still the land of opportunity? Sonny Hostin started softly. "I think opportunity looks different now. The pathways are broader in some ways, technology, education, but also narrower for working-class families. It's complicated." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "That's fair," he said, "but opportunity's always been complicated. America's a gamble. It pays off for the ones who play their cards right." Joy leaned in, raising an eyebrow. "That sounds like something only a man with a Hollywood paycheck would say." The audience laughed, but Jack didn't flinch. "Well, Joy, I didn't start with a Hollywood paycheck," he said, removing his sunglasses just long enough for the crowd to see his eyes. "I started in a little apartment in New Jersey. No heat. My mother worked double shifts. I got lucky, yeah, but I also worked my tail off." Sonny nodded, impressed. But Joy wasn't done. "You're the exception, not the rule. People are working harder than ever, and they're still barely scraping by. Don't tell me the American dream's still alive when most people can't even afford to see a doctor." The air thickened. The crowd murmured in agreement. Jack adjusted his jacket and smirked. "You're right about one thing. It's tougher now. But people have always struggled. It's not supposed to be easy. You can't legislate ambition." "Ambition," Joy said, her voice rising just a bit. "Jack, that's not the issue. We're talking about fairness, not fairy tales. You think someone working 2 jobs at minimum wage just needs more ambition?" The studio audience gasped, sensing the first real spark. Whoopi leaned forward with a grin. "All right, here we go." Jack smiled, that mischievous glint in his eye. "I'm just saying, we've turned complaining into a national pastime, Joy. People used to build things. Now they tweet about why they can't." The audience laughed, half in shock, half in approval. Joy laughed too, but there was a steel edge underneath it. "You sound like every old guy at a bar who thinks the country's gone soft. Newsflash, Jack, People are building things. They're just trying to survive while doing it. He pointed at her playfully. That's what I mean. You've got the fire. That's America right there. Joy blinked, momentarily caught off guard, then smirked. Don't charm your way out of this one, Hollywood. Oh, I wouldn't dream of it. But let's not pretend America's dead just because it's not perfect. You start telling people the dream's over, they'll stop dreaming. That's when we really lose. It was a sharp, grounded point, and it landed. Even Joy, for a second, looked thoughtful. Whoopi sensed the shift and chimed in. So, Jack, you're saying it's about perspective. That's exactly. America's still got opportunities. It's just that now you've got to dig deeper. And maybe, he glanced at Joy with a grin, argue louder. The audience erupted into laughter and applause, but the tension lingered beneath the humor. The sparks had officially turned to flame, and everyone knew this conversation was just getting started.
As the laughter died down, the energy on set sharpened. Joy leaned forward, her tone suddenly more serious. Jack, perspective is one thing, but you're talking like the system still works for everyone. It doesn't. You can't tell a single mom working 2 jobs that she just needs a new attitude. Jack adjusted his posture, voice low but firm. I'm saying she deserves the chance to fight her way up, Joy, not to have everything handed to her. You start giving out guarantees, and you take away grit. Grit? Joy shot back. You think people don't have grit? Try paying rent in New York on $15 an hour. Try dealing with medical debt. The American dream isn't just fading, it's being fenced off. The audience clapped in agreement, and Jack tilted his head, that famous Nicholson smirk flickering. You make it sound like America's a lost cause. It's not. It's just, he paused, choosing his words carefully, a little tougher to navigate. Every generation says the same thing. Things were easier back then. They never were. Sonny Hostin jumped in, sensing the tension thickening. Jack, what Joy's getting at is that the playing field's not equal. Some people start 10 miles ahead. Then catch up, Jack said simply. That's the job. Life doesn't care where you start. It cares what you do about it. The studio gasped. Joy threw up her hands. That's easy to say when you've made it. That's privilege talking, Jack. You can't ignore that half the country's drowning. Jack turned toward her, his tone measured but cutting. Privilege is knowing things could be worse and still complaining. I've seen people climb out of worse holes than the ones we've got today. Whoopi jumped in, half laughing, half refereeing. Okay, before one of you flips this table, Jack, are you saying America is fine, that everything is working? He shook his head. No, Whoopi, I'm saying it's still worth fighting for. People talk about decline, but I see resilience. I see folks starting small businesses, veterans going back to school, immigrants working 14-hour days. That's America. You want to fix it, celebrate that spirit, not bury it. Joy interjected, voice rising. But we can't just celebrate it, Jack. You can't keep praising resilience while ignoring why people need to be so resilient in the first place. Why are we okay with struggle being the norm? Applause broke out again, mostly from Joy's side of the room. Jack turned to the audience and gave that trademark grin. Because struggle is how you grow. Without it, you get soft. You stop earning what matters. Joy pointed at him. No, you stop caring what matters when you think pain is the only teacher. People deserve a fair shot without suffering for it. The audience hummed, divided. Some nodded with joy, others clapped for Jack. It felt like a split-screen America playing out live on stage. Jack leaned in, elbows on the table. You know what's funny? Everyone talks about fairness like it's a gift someone's supposed to give them. It's not. It's something you make for yourself. The second you wait for the government or society to hand it to you, you've already lost. Joy crossed her arms. So what, do we just let inequality run wild? That's not patriotism. That's indifference. That's reality, Jack replied flatly. Sonny turned to Joy, her brow furrowed. But Jack does have a point about self-determination. The country was built on that. The issue is, it's harder now to access those opportunities without connections or wealth. Jack nodded. Exactly. Harder, but not impossible. That's the line. We've got to stop telling people they're doomed. That's poison. Joy smirked, not letting go. And you've got to stop pretending this is still 1965. America's changed. Back then, a single paycheck could support a family. Today, you need two just to keep the lights on. So don't talk about the land of opportunity when most people can't even afford a chance. Jack took a breath, that half smile fading for the first time. Maybe that's the difference between us, Joy. You see what's broken, I see what's possible. The audience quieted. It wasn't a jab, it was conviction. Anna Navarro, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Maybe both are true. America's got cracks, but it's not crumbling. We can fix things and believe in what it used to stand for. Jack nodded at her. That's all I'm saying. You don't throw away the dream because it's dented. You patch it up. Joy rolled her eyes slightly, but couldn't hide a faint smile. You sound like a mechanic for lost causes. He grinned. Better that than a mortician for hope. The audience erupted, half laughing, half cheering. Even Whoopi slapped the table and chuckled. Oh, that's a lion right there. But Joy wasn't done. You're romanticizing it, Jack. Some people can't patch it up. They're too busy trying to survive. And yet, he replied quietly, they keep going. That's what makes America worth believing in. The studio fell still for a moment. Then came the applause, steady, emotional, complicated. It was clear now this wasn't just a debate about opportunity. It was about identity. And neither Joy nor Jack was backing down. The tension had grown from sharp to soulful, setting the stage for something deeper, more personal, and far harder to walk away from. As the applause died down, the tension between Jack and Joy settled into something heavier, less like a fight, more like a reckoning. The show's air felt dense, as if the next words could tilt the balance of the room. Whoopi leaned back, eyeing both of them. You know, she said softly, this isn't just about whether America's still the land of opportunity. It's about who feels like it ever was. Joy nodded, taking that cue. Exactly. For a lot of people, it never was. Jack, you keep saying, believe in the dream, but what about those who've only ever lived the nightmare? Jack's voice softened. Joy, I grew up in a working-class neighborhood. My mother raised me by herself while working long hours as a waitress. We didn't have money or connections. What we had was will. You couldn't afford to sit around complaining about what wasn't fair. You just went out and tried. Joy looked at him closely. And how many people had your luck, Jack? 1 in a million make it out of that. You're not the rule, you're the exception. Jack shook his head, eyes narrowing slightly. That's not true. I've seen janitors' kids become doctors. I've seen immigrants build companies. You can't convince me the ladder's gone just because it's harder to climb. Harder, Joy repeated. You mean almost impossible. You talk about ladders, but some people don't even have a floor to stand on. The audience murmured, sympathetic, divided. Jack leaned forward, his tone steady but laced with emotion. You know what happens when you tell people they don't have a chance? They start believing it. That's the real tragedy. We've traded hope for resentment. Joy crossed her arms. Hope doesn't pay the bills, Jack. No, but it gets you out of bed to try. There was a silence. The camera cut between them, Joy's eyes sharp but searching, Jack's steady with quiet conviction. Then he said something that shifted the tone completely. When my mother got sick, she couldn't afford the medicine she needed. We sold things, we went without, and she never once said the system failed her. She said, Jackie, if life gives you a fight, you fight harder. That's what I mean by the dream. It's not comfort, it's courage. The audience fell silent. Even Joy blinked, her expression softening for the first time. That's powerful, Sonny said gently. But don't you think your mother deserved better? Of course she did, Jack said. Everyone does. But she didn't wait for better to show up. She made it. Joy leaned in again, this time more curious than combative. So you think people should just toughen up? No policy, no reform, just bootstrap it? Jack sighed. I think policy helps, but without personal drive, it doesn't matter what laws you pass. You can't legislate spirit. Whoopi nodded slowly. That's the tricky part, isn't it? We're talking about two kinds of America, the one you build with your hands and the one that's supposed to have your back. Joy picked up on that. And the one that's supposed to have your back is broken. People can't just will themselves out of poverty anymore. You can't bootstrap your way past billionaires hoarding opportunity. The crowd applauded loudly, many shouting Joy's name. But Jack didn't flinch. You think billionaires are the problem? No. It's the idea that success is someone else's fault. We've turned envy into policy. Joy raised her eyebrows. You sound like you're defending greed. I'm defending ambition, he shot back. You kill that, and the country's finished. The audience buzzed again, but then Jack's tone shifted, more reflective now. I've spent a lot of time with young people lately, kids in their 20s who feel like the future is already gone. They think the system is rigged, that nothing they do matters. And it breaks my heart, because if we keep teaching that lesson, they'll stop trying altogether. That's the end of the American experiment. Joy's face softened slightly. So what's your fix, Jack? Just keep believing? He smiled faintly. Belief is where it starts. Then comes action. But you can't skip the belief. Joy exhaled, shaking her head. I don't know, Jack. I look around and see people exhausted from believing. They've been told to keep the faith for decades, and it's only gotten harder. Jack nodded slowly, as if he understood that exhaustion. Maybe, but giving up on the idea of America won't make it better. Whoopi leaned forward. So you're saying, even when it feels broken, you keep building? Exactly, Jack said. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. There was a quiet pause, a rare shared stillness between two people who couldn't be more different, yet somehow met in the middle for a heartbeat. The camera zoomed in on Joy's face. Her expression had softened, but her eyes still burned with conviction. You're an optimist, Jack. He smiled. And you're a realist. Maybe America needs both, Joy replied. That line drew applause, long and emotional. For the first time, both sides of the audience clapped together. But even as the moment felt like a truce, there was an undercurrent, something deeper brewing beneath Jack's calm and Joy's fire. Because when the show returned from its next segment, neither of them would hold back. The gloves would come off completely. And that's when everything changed. The studio air was thick now, the audience leaning forward as if afraid to blink. Joy Behar's smile had flattened into something sharper, while Jack Nicholson sat back, cool and unshaken, that half grin of his still teasing the tension. Joy leaned in, her voice carrying that familiar bite. Jack, it's a little rich hearing a millionaire actor lecture regular Americans about grit and opportunity. You've had success most people can't even dream of. Maybe you're out of touch. The audience gasped. Whoopi shot Joy a warning look, but Jack just laughed, not cruelly, but knowingly, like he'd heard it all before. Joy, I grew up in New Jersey, raised by a single mother who waited tables. My first job in Hollywood was delivering mail at MGM. Nobody handed me a damn thing. You think I was born with sunglasses and a Lakers seat? The crowd roared. Joy tried to cut in, but Jack wasn't done. I've seen this country change. And yeah, the system isn't perfect. But I've also seen kids from nowhere make it big, not because they were rich, but because they didn't quit when life was unfair. That spirit, it's still here. It's just quieter now, buried under all this complaining. Joy crossed her arms, visibly stung. So you're saying if people struggle, it's their fault? Jack's eyes darkened, his voice firm. No. I'm saying if people stop trying, that's when we all lose. When you start believing the dream's dead, that's when it dies. The audience clapped hard, not just politely this time, but with conviction. Sonny Hostin tried to defuse the tension, jumping in with a legal angle. But Jack, don't you think corporate greed and housing costs have changed the game? It's not 1970 anymore. Jack nodded. Absolutely. The system's harder, but we can't just blame it forever. My issue is this idea that America's promise is gone. It's not gone. It's waiting. It's waiting for people who will fight for it again. Joy sighed, exasperated. That's a nice movie speech, Jack, but reality's uglier. People can't fight their way out of a broken economy. That did it. Jack leaned forward, his voice steady but intense. You know what's uglier, Joy? Giving up. Teaching young people to believe everything's stacked against them, that they'll never own a home, never find purpose, never matter. You call that progress? I call it surrender. The studio fell silent. Even Joy paused. Whoopi finally spoke, quiet but powerful. You're both touching on something true. People feel left behind, but they also need hope. Maybe the real question is how to rebuild that faith. Jack nodded, softening. Exactly. I'm not saying it's easy, but somewhere out there some kid is watching this show, and I want them to know they still have a shot. The applause started small, then grew into a full wave. Joy looked down, shaking her head with a faint smile, realizing she might have just been out-argued, not shouted down, but out-hearted. Jack sat back, the conversation cooling. You don't have to agree with me, Joy, but you can't tell me America's finished. That's not the country I grew up in, and I don't think it's the one you want to leave behind. And for a brief moment, even Joy didn't have a comeback. The audience didn't either. They just clapped, long, hard, and real. The studio was quieter now. The once roaring audience sat in a kind of stunned silence, as if they'd all just witnessed something bigger than a talk show spat. Jack Nicholson leaned back, his usual smirk replaced with a half-smile of reflection. Joy Behar had her arms crossed, her tone softer than before, though her eyes were still sharp. Whoopi looked between them. You two just summed up America in 10 minutes, she said. One side saying, keep dreaming, the other saying, wake up. Maybe it's both. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. You know, Whoopi, I've been around long enough to know this. People still want the dream, but these days they're scared it's gone. And fear kills ambition faster than failure ever could. Joy looked at him, her tone less combative now. Jack, I don't disagree with that. But when the system's tilted, you can't just tell people to dream harder. You've got to make the ground even first. The crowd murmured. It wasn't applause, it was thought. That quiet kind of hum that happens when a conversation actually lands. Jack nodded slowly. Maybe. But the system's never been even, Joy. It's been built by fighters, immigrants, dreamers, people who didn't wait for permission. He looked out toward the audience, his voice low but steady. The dream's not dead. It's just waiting for someone to believe in it again. That line hit. Some in the crowd clapped. Others just sat back, letting it sink in. Joy sighed and said, almost to herself, maybe it's not the dream that's fading. Maybe it's the patience. Jack grinned. Then maybe it's time we all stop waiting for perfect conditions and start building again. That's what makes it the land of opportunity. Not what's handed to you, but what you make out of what's left. Whoopi closed the segment.
Well, that's a wrap on today's show, one we won't forget anytime soon. Jack Nicholson reminding us why the American dream still stirs something, even in the most cynical hearts. As the credits rolled, Jack leaned toward Joy and said, quietly, "You fight hard, Joy. I respect that." Joy smirked. "You're not so bad yourself, old man." He laughed, tipping his imaginary hat. The camera caught that last moment, a truce wrapped in humor, framed by years of lived experience. And as the screen faded to black, one thought lingered in everyone's mind. Maybe the land of opportunity isn't what America promises, it's how its people refuse to stop chasing, even when the odds are stacked against them. If you like this emotional debate, make sure to subscribe for more powerful showdowns, heartfelt moments, and unforgettable conversations that go beyond headlines. Tell us below, do you still believe America is the land of opportunity?